following program is a production of The Bob and John Show. Any similarity between person and places is strictly a coincidence. The producers of this program are solely responsible for its content.
It's now time for the Sudsy Wudsy Show, brought to you by Sudsy Wudsy. Sudsy Wudsy. It's an all-purpose cleaner. It's a car wash. It's a bubble bath. Yes, it's Sudsy Wudsy. Sudsy Wudsy now proudly presents The Adventures of Jimmy Ballpoint, Private Investigator, Ear, Eyes, and Nose, the complete package, Jimmy Ballpoint.
This is where I work, the city. It used to be a nice place with nice people. But like everything else, they left. And now the city is a dark and gritty city, with dark and gritty sidewalks, with dark and gritty taxis. Downright depressing if it wasn't for the gum stuck under the tables at the automat. I'm Jimmy Ballpoint, private investigator, ear, eye, and nose, the complete package. My office is up 3 flights of stairs, straight up, right above a flop house. A little office with a desk, chair, sink, and a couch. Like I said, a dark and gritty place. But it's just right for a guy like me. The case that I'm working on now is the case of 4907. A cup of stale Joe in the morning tells me to find some work, and in a hurry. The door to my office swings open, and Sully drops another pile of bills on the corner of my desk. Sully delivers the first-class stamps every morning about this time. The smell of stale, burnt grinds hangs in the air as Sully turns before he leaves and tells me he'll leave the door open for some air. I turn my chair around to the office window, separate the blinds, and watch the comings and goings of the street below. Well, what do you know? If I wasn't mistaken, that snitch across the street. He's got a bounce in his step this morning. This morning, like every other morning, there's a routine Snitch has. Stops every morning at Blink's newsstand. Slides a newspaper under his arm and slowly walks away. Blinks doesn't do much. He just looks the other way. Snitch ain't worth the trouble. Wait a minute. I don't believe it. Snitch, that worthless stretch of manhood, just reached into his pocket and paid for the morning edition. Blinks stares at Snitch, looks down at the change and can't believe his eyes. Hey, I don't blame you, Blinks. I lean back in my swivel chair and go to take another slug of Joe when I figure, enough of this mud. I get up, go over to the coat rack and take my hat and coat. Time for a cup of real Joe, and maybe even a bagel. I reach into my pocket and feel just enough change to cover the Joe and bagel. Gonna have to skip the cream cheese this time around. I left my office and started down the staircase when I stopped at the open door of Vernon's office. Vernon is in the private investigator business too. just a different racket. Vernon does the divorces in progress work. A rough racket for a mug. Gotta be on your toes in that line. As Vernon once put it, it's good for the arches. I didn't get it. Vernon must be going out on his next job in disguise. He's all done up like a dog catcher. Good luck with that one. I made my way to the bottom of the staircase and out the door and into the street. Kinda busy this morning. I see Perch is directing traffic in the center of the street. Everybody calls him Perch because he stands on this box on the top of a block of concrete. He holds up one hand and waves the other, directing traffic. No one really pays attention. Perch has been knocked off that concrete block a few times. Like I said, no one pays attention. Besides, that spot is usually reserved for the badges who are ready to retire anyway. Kind of like a safe spot, out of the way. Someday I'll have to ask Perch how he feels about that. I cross the street and head over to Carney's Diner. I push the shiny doors open and cover a stool. Ah, the smell of a fresh pot of joe. Carney's daughter, Becky, comes over and slides a cup and saucer to me, pours a fresh cup and asks if I'd like the usual. Yeah, Becky, but hold the cream cheese this morning. Becky looks over her shoulder and down the counter. There's Snitch, having breakfast. Well, how do you like that? Snitch, having breakfast. Becky tells me that he paid cash for it himself. Surprised the daylights out of her. Snitch looks in my direction, holds up his fork with some ham on it, motions to Becky, he's got it, then goes back to his breakfast. I call Becky back and quietly mention, I'll have a little cream cheese with that bagel. Snitch must have hit it pretty big with the ponies. I finished my Joe and bagel. You know, that combo is just right sometimes. Just hits the spot. I left Carney's and figured I'd better head back to the office and start some phone calls. I made it across the street and started for the front door of my building when I heard the screeching of tires. I turned and there was Perch, picking himself off the pavement and dusting himself off. Perch was okay. In fact, it's early in the week. He's only got 2 more hits to go. I made it upstairs and stopped at Vernon's office door. It was open, and a trail of shredded clothes went through the doorway, around the corner, and into Vernon's office. I slowly walked in and found Vernon over by his medicine cabinet. The poor guy looked like he just walked through a meat chopper. Vernon, what the heck happened to you? Vernon said his disguise was so good that it attracted the wrath of every mutt within 5 blocks. And when they caught up to him, well, he ended up looking like this. Vernon told me the next time he's going to get in disguise as a dog in the movies. You know, the dog that saves that little boy all the time. I stopped and thought for a moment and told Vernon, Vernon, Isn't that dog in the movies a female? You know, Vernon, I'd really think that one through if I were you. I left Vernon and headed for the top landing of my office. I entered my office and tossed my sport coat and hat towards the coat rack. I missed, of course. I settled into my swivel chair and couldn't get Snitch out of my mind. Snitch, who's always broke into Old Man Pierogi for a lot of clams. Snitch, who has a permanent resting place on the knuckles of a gorilla named Wrinkles, Old Man Pierogi's collector. And if that isn't enough, he's scared of his own shadow. Now the mug has enough dough and spreads it around like tap water. Something doesn't make sense here. I had nothing better else to do that day, so I thought I'd make the rounds and see what I could dig up. I think I'll look up Peekaboo Riley. I fixed him up with Rita, the gal that slings hash over at Carney's Diner. Let's see if I can play the you owe me one card. I made it out my office and down the stairs, stopping at Vernon's open door. Vernon was determined to put on the dog disguise. I don't even want to think about this one. I made it to the sidewalk, turned right, and headed to the taxi stand next to Angel's Bar. Two Fingers Tommy was busy counting the dough in his tip can. Looks like you're having a good morning here, Tommy. Tommy just smiled, recounting his early morning take. It didn't take long for a taxi to pull up, and I reached for the back door, then froze. There behind the wheel was Flippo the clown. This is just peachy, listening to honk after honk this early in the morning. Well, I might as well get on with it. Morning there, Flippo. How are things? Flippo just said, okay. Glad to hear it. He then told me that the morning started off slow. The cab was a little difficult to start this morning. The missus had an attitude about something. The bacon was burnt. The kids got a cold. The cab had a flat tire this morning when he checked in, but besides that, things were good. We drove to the docks. It was very quiet this time in the morning. Flippo told me we're here. I told him to wait. This shouldn't take long. Flippo said he'd wait around the corner. He'd keep the motor running. He'll occupy his time by finishing a grilled cheese and a cup of joe. Flip through the sports section. Stuff like that. Good man, Flippo. I found the Yo-Ho-Ho shipping and warehouse. The two large sliding doors were open, and I walked in. The morning fog off the piers came rolling in and covered the platform, swirling in and out between the steamer trunks and the baggage trolleys.
Ballpoint. Just the slug I'm looking for.
Out of the warehouse shack came Peekaboo Riley. I hardly recognized the mug. Hey, Riley, you don't look so good. Riley made a glancing motion over his right shoulder towards the warehouse office. I looked over his shoulder, and there was Rita in the warehouse window. Rita retired as a gator wrestler, and she was wearing her wrestling outfit. Oh, sorry for interrupting your morning with Rita, but the reason for my visit is to ask you, have you seen Snitch around lately? Riley stiffened up and didn't look too happy with my question. It seems that Snitch got Riley a new radio for helping him move a table and chair set into his apartment. 2 big mugs came by a day later and took the radio. They were debt collectors, and Snitch owed them for the radio. Rita wasn't too happy about missing her favorite rodeo shows, so she's back to wrestling again. She set up a wrestling ring, ropes, bell, and everything. And since there's no gators, guess who? I'm really sorry about the rodeo thing. I wish Peekaboo well, turned and headed across the pier to where Flippo parked his taxi. I got in and told Flippo to head to Stem's floor shop. You know, for a big mug, you'd think Peekaboo would last more than 2 rounds. Stem's flower shop was only a few minutes' drive. We pulled up to the curb outside the flower shop. I got out and told Flippo to wait. Flippo said, okay. I wasn't looking forward to this. Stems was the owner, a real greaseball. Everything about the mug was slimy. He shook hands with Wrinkles once. Wrinkles found no humor in shaking hands with a wet dish rag. Wrinkles took exception to the grin on Stem's face. Stems ended up with shaking hands with 2 bags of cement, a free ride to the center of the river at 2 in the morning. I entered the flower shop, saw Stems arranging some flowers, and asked if he had seen Snitch lately. Stems seemed noticeably upset. He dropped the flowers in his hand, placed both hands on his hips, and made it clear that Snitch was no longer welcome in his shop. Snitch bought an arrangement for Old Man Pierogi's niece, and Stems was about to deliver when he found out that Snitch couldn't pay for them. Stems was explaining more, but I couldn't understand the guy. His voice had this way of cracking with a high pitch every time he got upset. On and on he raged, and I couldn't understand a word. Okay, enough of this stuff. I'm getting nowhere. Flippo drove me back into town and dropped me off at the taxi stand next to Angel's bar. I walked in, covered a stool, and Angel poured me a shot of Amber Glow. Amber Glow is a real kicker this morning. But hey, nothing else seems to be coming my way. Wrinkles was sitting on a stool not that far from me, turned and said, "Where's Snitch?" At least some things are right where they belong. Where's Snitch is usually the first order of the day around here. Angel came over and leaned against the bar and asked the same question. Somehow I sensed something wasn't wrong with Snitch this morning. I took my shot of Amber Glow and headed for a table in the back of Angel's bar. Just then the front door to Angel's bar opened, letting the sun in that covered the floor and the front of the bar. It was Snitch. Snitch waltzed in with a bounce into his step, like a mug without a care in the world. He covered his stool right next to Wrinkles and looked confused at the silence between Angel and Wrinkles. Angel went over to the cash register and slipped out a $20 bill. He held up the bill and asked Wrinkles to take a 20 out of his pocket and hold that up. Angel looked at the bill and said the last 4 serial numbers on the bill are 4907. He then asked Wrinkles to read the last 4 serial numbers off his $20 bill. Wrinkles looked at his bill and said, 4907. Snitch didn't catch on at first. He said he won that money from a guy with a table set up on the other side of town. He'd place a pea under a walnut shell, then spin the shells around. Then Snitch would bet a 20 that he could find the pea. After losing the first round, he won 5 straight games. The guy folded up his table and left for the day, but he'd be back the next day. The expression on Snitch's face slowly changed to the fact that he forked over a perfectly good $20 bill for 50 counterfeit bills. I decided that now was a good time to get some fresh air. I made my way to the front door of my office building. Perch has only one more hit to go. I made my way up the stairs and stopped at Vernon's office. His office door was open, and the floor was covered with some sort of fur. Vernon was slouched over in his chair, his head resting in the folded arms on his desk. I was about to ask Vernon if he was okay when he got up and started to walk around. Vernon saw me and said he'd talk to me later. Right about now, he's too sore to talk. I left Vernon and made it to my office. I tossed my hat and sport coat on the rack, and I missed, of course. As I sat back in my swivel chair, I heard footsteps rushing up the staircase. There, at the open door of my office, was Snitch. Snitch didn't look so good. He made his way over to the front of my desk, glanced behind him, said I had to help him. It was a matter of life and death. He then reached into his pocket, pulled out a $20 bill and said, "You gotta help me." He slid the $20 bill across my desk towards me and said, "There's more where that came from."
Well, folks, that concludes another episode of Jimmy Ballpoint, Private Investigator, brought to you by Sudsy Wudsy, that all-purpose cleaner. Keep your radio dial on this station for next week's Jimmy Ballpoint, Private Investigator. Ear, eye, nose, the complete package.